Welcome to Scripted Chapters, where every story unfolds like a movie and revenge served right. Subscribe to open up to scripted revenge so you never miss a new chapter when the tables turn every week. Than you. I was using Nathan's laptop to print permission slips for our daughter's field trip when the message popped up on the screen. My finger hovered over the mouse as I read the words that would shatter my entire world. Last night felt like old times. I miss waking up in your arms. Can't wait until next week. The sender's name made my stomach drop. Veronica. His ex-girlfriend from college. The woman he swore meant nothing anymore. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands shook as I scrolled up through their conversation. Hotel names. Inside jokes. Plans for next month. Then I saw the attachments. Photos of them together in bed, her head on his bare chest, both smiling at the camera. The dates were recent. Some from last week. Some from last month. One from our anniversary weekend when he told me he had a work conference. I heard his footsteps coming up the stairs. My breath caught. I looked at the doorway just as Nathan walked in, coffee mug in hand, humming softly. His eyes went to the laptop screen. Then to my face. The color drained from his cheeks. His mouth opened, then closed. The mug trembled in his. "It's not what you think," Nathan said quickly, setting down his coffee and moving toward me. His voice had that careful, measured tone he used when talking to clients. Professional. Controlled. Fake. I stood up from the desk chair, my legs unsteady. "Then what is it?" My voice came out calmer than I felt, which seemed to encourage him. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Now it just looked rehearsed. Veronica's going through something difficult. A bad breakup. She's been reaching out for support, and I've been trying to help her as a friend. Just a friend. I looked back at the screen, at the photo of them tangled in hotel sheets. This doesn't look like friendship. He followed my gaze and winced. Those are old photos she sent me. From years ago. She's confused right now, emotionally unstable. She's reading too much into our conversations. Then he took a step closer, his expression shifting to concern. "Honestly, Emily, you've been so distant lately. So wrapped up in your work and the kids. Maybe that's why I've been talking to her more. I needed someone to listen." My mouth fell open. He was turning this on me. Making it my fault that he was texting his ex-girlfriend in bed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw his laptop across the room and watch it shatter. Instead, I closed it carefully and looked him in the eyes. "You're right," I said softly. "I have been distant. I'm sorry." The relief that washed over his face was almost comical. He actually smiled. "Thank you for understanding. I knew you'd be reasonable about this." He kissed my forehead like nothing had happened, then headed to the shower. The moment the bathroom door closed, I opened the laptop again. My hands were steadier now. Angry, but steady. I went through his folders systematically, looking for anything else he might be hiding. That was when I found it. A folder labeled Work Backup 2023, buried inside another folder called Tax Documents. Nobody hides work files that deep. I clicked it open. Inside were hundreds of photos. Veronica in his car. Veronica at restaurants. Veronica in hotel rooms I didn't recognize. The dates went back years. Not months. Years. 10 years, to be exact. The same 10 years we'd been married. While I was pregnant with our first child, there was a photo of them at a beach resort. While I was recovering from surgery last year, there were weekend getaway pictures. Every business trip. Every late night at the office. Every time he said he was too tired for date night. He was with her. I felt like I was falling through ice, the cold seeping into my bones. How had I not seen this? How had I been so blind? I kept scrolling, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Not yet. There were screenshots of text conversations, sweet messages about loving each other, about building a future together. But what stopped my heart completely was a scanned copy of a phone bill. A second phone plan. Under his name. With a number I didn't recognize. I grabbed my phone and dialed it, my hand shaking. It rang once, twice. Then a woman answered. "Hey baby, I'm just getting groceries. Do you need me to pick up anything special for tonight?" Veronica's voice. Bright and casual, like she was talking to her husband. I hung up without saying a word. My mind raced. He had a second phone. A secret phone just for her. That was why I never saw strange numbers on his regular phone. That was why there were no suspicious calls or texts on our phone bill. He'd been living a double life right under my nose, and he'd been careful enough to cover every track. Almost every track. I heard the shower turn off. I quickly closed all the folders and returned the laptop screen to the permission slip I was supposed to be printing. Nathan came out of the bathroom in a towel, steam following him into the bedroom. He was smiling again, relaxed, like the earlier confrontation had never happened. "So, we're good?" he asked, pulling clothes from his dresser. I forced myself to smile back. "We're good. I overreacted. I'm sorry." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me, his skin still damp and warm. "I love you, Em. You know that, right? You and the kids are my whole world." The words should have meant something. Once they would have. Now they just sounded hollow. "I love you too," I whispered, because that was what he needed to hear. He kissed me and went downstairs to make breakfast. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at nothing. My mind was spinning with images of them together, with the realization that my entire marriage had been a lie. But underneath the shock and the pain, something else was growing. Something cold and calculated. He thought I believed him. He thought I was going to let this go. He was wrong. I walked to my closet and pulled out an old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside was the money I'd been saving secretly for emergencies. $3,000 in cash. I'd started the emergency fund years ago, just in case we ever needed it. I took $500 from the emergency fund and drove across town to a private investigation office I'd found online. The building was plain, unmarked, tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service. Inside, a woman in her 40s sat behind a desk covered in case files. Her name was Michelle Torres, and her eyes were sharp and knowing. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "How long do you want surveillance?" "As long as it takes to get proof," I said. "I need photos, videos, anything that proves he's been lying." She quoted me a price. It was more than I'd expected, but I didn't hesitate. I paid her the cash up front for the first week. "Give me his schedule, his car description, and the address where you think he's meeting her," Michelle said. I provided everything I knew. She promised to start immediately. 1 week later, she called me to her office. The photos were spread across her desk like a deck of cards showing my worst nightmare. Nathan and Veronica holding hands outside a resort 2 hours from our house. Them kissing in his car in a grocery store parking lot. Them checking into a hotel room together at 3 in the afternoon. Every photo was time-stamped. Every location was documented. The evidence was undeniable and devastating. Michelle slid another folder across the desk. "There's more." Inside were bank statements. A checking account I'd never seen before. Joint account holders, Nathan Pierce and Veronica Walsh. My husband's name. Her name. Together. "He's been paying her rent," Michelle explained, pointing to monthly withdrawals of $1,500. "Same day every month for the past 3 years. The account's been active for 7 years total." 7 years. We'd bought our house 6 years ago. He'd stood in our kitchen and said we needed to be careful with money, that we couldn't afford the renovations I wanted. Meanwhile, he'd been funding an entire separate life. "There's also this," Michelle said, handing me another document. A lease agreement. For an apartment across town in Veronica's name, but with Nathan listed as a co-signer and emergency contact. He'd helped her get the place. He was probably the one who suggested hiding the payments in a secret account so I wouldn't notice the missing money. I stared at the papers until the words blurred together. My hands were steady now. No shaking. No tears. Just cold, clear anger. Thank you, I said, gathering the files. Can you keep watching him for 2 more weeks? Michelle studied my face. Then she nodded. No problem. And Emily? Whatever you're planning, document everything. Keep copies of all of this in multiple places. I left her office and drove straight to the law firm downtown where I'd made an appointment under my maiden name. The attorney, Helen Frost, was a small woman with silver hair and a reputation for being ruthless in divorce cases. She reviewed the evidence I'd brought with clinical efficiency. Bank statements, photos from the private investigator, screenshots of messages I'd photographed from Nathan's laptop. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like respect. This is very thorough. You've done my job for me. What happens now? I asked. She folded her hands on the desk. Freeze everything quietly. Don't let him know you're preparing for divorce. Move money if you can do it without raising suspicion. Secure any assets in your name only. Document every financial transaction from this point forward. She paused. And whatever you do, don't confront him until we're ready. Men like this, when they're cornered, they try to hide assets fast. We want him comfortable and careless. I nodded, absorbing every word. How long will this take? If you can give me 3 weeks, I can have everything ready. Papers filed, accounts frozen, the works. But you have to play along until then. Can you do that? I thought about the last 10 years. The lies. The betrayal. The life I'd built with a man who was building another life behind my back. Yes, I said. I can do that. The next 2 weeks were the hardest performance of my life. I smiled at Nathan over breakfast. I packed his lunches with little notes saying I loved him. I asked about his day and listened to his lies about meetings and deadlines. At night, I curled against him in bed like nothing was wrong. And it worked. He relaxed completely. The careful distance he'd been keeping disappeared. He started joking again, touching me more, acting like the husband I remembered from years ago. One evening, he pulled me onto his lap while we watched television. You seem different lately, he said, kissing my neck. Happier. I am, I lied smoothly. I think we're in a good place again. He smiled against my skin. I'm glad you're not suspicious anymore. For a while there, I thought you might actually believe I was cheating or something crazy like that. The audacity of those words should have broken me. Instead, I laughed softly and kissed him. That would be crazy, I agreed. Inside, I was counting down the days until Helen had everything ready. I was memorizing every lie, every careless comment, every moment of false affection he showed me while planning his next hotel visit with Veronica. He had no idea what was coming. And that was exactly how I wanted it. One afternoon while Nathan was at work, I did something reckless. I used his laptop to log into his secret messaging app and sent Veronica a message, pretending to be him. Can't stop thinking about you. When can we meet again? Her response came within 30 seconds. Tomorrow? I can take a half day. God, I miss you so much. I hate that you're still living with her. When are you finally going to leave? I stared at the word her on the screen. That was what I'd become to Veronica. Not Emily. Not Nathan's wife. Just her. The obstacle between them and their happiness. I typed back, still pretending to be Nathan. Soon. I promise. Just need to handle some financial things first. You've been saying that for years, she replied. I'm starting to think you're never going to leave. Maybe I should just tell her myself. At least then it would be out in the open. My heart hammered. She'd threatened to expose them before. That explained why Nathan had been so panicked when I saw the original message on his laptop. He was terrified of losing control of the situation. I typed quickly. Don't do that. Please. Trust me. I'm working on it. Just give me a little more time. Fine, she wrote back. But I'm done waiting forever. You need to choose. Me or her. And you need to choose soon. I logged out and closed the laptop. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From rage. 2 days later, Nathan announced he had a business trip planned. "It's our 10th anniversary next week," I said carefully, watching his reaction. He barely flinched. "I know, and I'm sorry. This trip came up last minute. Important client. I'll make it up to you when I get back, I promise. We'll go somewhere nice." I smiled like I believed him. Of course. I understand. But I already knew the truth. Michel had sent me his actual itinerary. He'd booked a suite at the Riverside Resort, the same place they'd gone 3 times before. The reservation was under his name. 2 guests. Check-in on our anniversary. I called the hotel that afternoon. "Hi, I'd like to upgrade a reservation to your honeymoon suite. The name is Nathan Pierce." The woman on the phone was cheerful. "Oh, wonderful. Let me pull that up. Yes, I see Mr. Pierce has a booking for next week. Would you like to add any special amenities?" "Champagne and roses," I said. "And put it all on my credit card. I want to surprise him." "How romantic," she gushed. I gave her my card information and confirmed everything. When she asked for my name for the billing, I said clearly, "Emily Pierce." His wife. There was a long pause. Then, "Okay. Yes, I'll make sure everything is arranged." "Thank you," I said sweetly, and hung up. They'd walk into that room expecting a simple weekend getaway. Instead, they'd find an anniversary suite decorated for a married couple, paid for by the wife they were betraying. Michelle had already arranged for cameras to be positioned near the resort. She'd rented a room on the same floor with a view of their suite's balcony. "We'll get everything," she promised. "Photos, video, timestamps. All admissible in court." I drove to the resort the day before they were set to arrive and met Michelle in her surveillance room. She had professional equipment set up, cameras with zoom lenses pointed at the balcony across the way. We waited. The next evening, they arrived together, laughing as they walked through the parking lot. Nathan's hand was on Veronica's lower back, guiding her toward the entrance. I watched through the camera lens as they checked in, as they rode the elevator up, as they opened the door to the suite. Even from a distance, I saw their confusion at the champagne and roses. Then I saw Nathan's face go pale when he read the card. "Happy 10th anniversary to my beloved husband. All my love, Emily." Through the telephoto lens, I watched Veronica grab the card from his hands. Watched her read it. Watched her turn on him, her mouth moving in what was clearly shouting. He tried to calm her down, his hands raised in a placating gesture. She threw the champagne bottle. It shattered against the wall behind him. They argued for 20 minutes before she stormed out onto the balcony. That was when Michelle got the best shots. Veronica crying. Nathan following her out, pulling her into his arms. Them kissing desperately against the railing, his hands tangled in her hair. Michelle's camera captured everything. Every angle. Every moment. Undeniable proof of adultery, timestamped and geolocated. "Got it," she said quietly. The next morning, I met with Helen again. She spread the new photos across her desk alongside the financial documents. "This is everything we need," she said with satisfaction. "Now, there's one more thing you should know." She pulled out a copy of our prenuptial agreement. Nathan had insisted on it before we got married, saying it was just a smart financial move. I'd signed without really reading it, too in love to care. Helen pointed to a specific clause halfway down the 3rd page. Section 7, subsection C. In the event of adultery proven by clear evidence, the offending party forfeits all claims to marital property acquired during the marriage, with exceptions only for premarital assets. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. So if I can prove he cheated, he loses everything? Everything you acquired together, yes. The house, the cars, the joint savings, his stake in the business you helped him build. All of it becomes yours. She looked at me seriously. This clause works both ways, but you're not the one who broke the marriage. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. Not happiness. Not peace. But the cold satisfaction of knowing that justice was possible. What do I need to do? Helen outlined the next steps. Document every shared asset. Photograph important papers. Move my personal inheritance into a separate account that couldn't be touched. Secure my business shares. I spent the next 3 days doing exactly that. Quietly. Carefully. Nathan noticed nothing. I transferred my inheritance from my grandmother into a new account at a different bank. $75,000 that Nathan had always eyed like it was partly his. It was mine. Left to me specifically. Now it was protected. I moved my shares in the marketing company I'd built before we married into a trust under my name only. Those shares were worth more than our house. I documented the title to my car, which I'd bought with money from my business. I photographed our mortgage papers, showing we'd split the down payment 50-50. I copied his employment contract showing his salary and bonuses. I gathered 10 years of tax returns. Every piece of paper that showed what we owned and how we'd acquired it went into a file that I kept at my sister's house. Nathan never asked what I was doing. He was too busy planning his next trip to see Veronica. Helen had advised me not to move any money from our joint accounts yet. That would tip him off, she'd said. Wait until the day we file. So I waited. I watched our joint savings sit there, $50,000 we'd accumulated together, knowing that soon it would all be mine. His paycheck still deposited into that account every 2 weeks. His half of the mortgage still came out automatically. Everything looked normal from the outside. But I was building a fortress around everything that mattered, and he was too distracted by his affair to notice. Nathan's parents came over for Sunday dinner. His mother, Diane, hugged me and complimented the roast I'd made. His father, James, played with our kids in the backyard. We sat around the dining table like a normal, happy family. Nathan raised his wine glass for a toast. To loyalty and marriage, he said, looking right at me with that sincere expression he'd perfected. To family and commitment. Everyone clinked glasses. I sipped my wine and smiled. Under the table, I saw his phone light up. He glanced down quickly, then set it face down on his lap. But I'd already seen the preview of the text. Veronica, I can't do this anymore. You need to tell her, or I will. His jaw tightened. He excused himself to use the bathroom, taking the phone with him. He was gone for 10 minutes. When he came back, he was smiling again, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. Everything okay? I asked sweetly. Perfect, he lied. That night, after his parents left and the kids were in bed, I checked his laptop again. He'd deleted the conversation with Veronica, but his cloud backup hadn't synced yet. I found the messages. You can't tell her yet. I'm working on the finances. Give me 1 more month. 1 more month, Veronica had replied. Then I'm done waiting. I deserve better than being your secret. I know. I promise. Just trust me. I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself from an account he didn't know about. Helen called me 3 days later. We're ready. I can file tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow was a Wednesday. Nathan had a morning meeting downtown. I'd drop the kids at school, and he'd never know what hit him until it was too late. Do it, I said. That evening, I played the perfect wife one last time. I made his favorite dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I sat next to him on the couch while he watched television, my head on his shoulder. I love you, he said during a commercial break. I'm lucky to have you. I looked up at him, memorizing his face. This man I trusted with everything. This man who'd lied to me for a decade. I love you too, I said, because those words meant something different now. I loved who I thought he was. I loved the life I thought we had. But this man sitting next to me was a stranger wearing my husband's face. The next morning, I woke up early and got ready with unusual care. I wore my navy suit, the one that made me look professional and untouchable. I did my makeup perfectly. I straightened my hair. Nathan noticed. You look nice. Big meeting today. Something like that, I said, kissing his cheek. He left for his meeting at 8:30. At 9, I went to the bank and transferred half of our joint savings into my personal account. $25,000. My half. Then I drove to Helen's office and signed the divorce papers. By 10, they were filed with the court. By 10:15, the banks had been notified to freeze our joint accounts pending the divorce proceedings. Nathan called me at 11:30, his voice tight with panic. Something's wrong with our bank accounts. My card was declined, and when I called them, they said the accounts are frozen. Do you know anything about this? I was sitting in my car outside our house, looking at the life I was about to dismantle. Yes, I said calmly. I know about it. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the divorce papers that were filed this morning. I'm talking about Veronica. I'm talking about 10 years of lies. I heard him breathing, fast and shallow. Emily, wait. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I have photos, bank statements, hotel receipts, messages, all of it. How long have you known? His voice cracked. Long enough to build a case. Long enough to protect everything that's mine. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with her, I swear. I almost laughed. You've had 10 years to end things with her. You chose not to. Now you don't get another choice. What about the kids? What about our family? You should have thought about that before you spent our anniversary weekend in a hotel room with your mistress. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. This was really happening. After all the planning, all the waiting, all the careful documentation, I was finally taking my life back. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved fast. Helen had filed for an emergency hearing based on the adultery evidence and the hidden accounts. The judge reviewed the case and granted a temporary order giving me full access to our joint assets while freezing Nathan's access. The prenuptial clause was clear. Proven adultery meant forfeiture. Nathan hired a lawyer who tried to argue that the photos weren't conclusive, that the financial records were circumstantial. But Helen presented everything. The hotel footage. The timestamps matching his supposed business trips. The secret phone records showing thousands of calls to Veronica. The joint account he'd hidden from me. The lease he'd co-signed for her apartment. The judge listened impassively, then made his ruling. The house would be mine. The joint savings would be mine. Nathan's share of the business equity we'd built together would be liquidated and given to me. He would keep his salary and his car, but everything else was forfeit under the terms of the prenuptial agreement he'd insisted on. His lawyer tried to protest, but the judge cut him off. Your client signed this agreement. The adultery clause was clear. The evidence of infidelity is overwhelming. The ruling stands. Nathan sat in the courtroom looking like he'd been hit by a truck. He kept glancing at me, but I refused to meet his eyes. I stared straight ahead, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. 2 days after the court ruling, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Veronica. You destroyed him, she said. Her voice was thick with tears. He's lost everything because of you. No, I corrected calmly. He lost everything because of himself. Because of his choices. Because of you. He loves me. He was going to leave you anyway. We were planning a life together. I laughed, and I knew it sounded harsh. Was he? Because the messages I saw said he'd been promising to leave me for years. Funny how he never quite got around to it. She was quiet for a moment. He told me you were cold. That you didn't love him anymore. That your marriage was dead. He lied to you the same way he lied to me. The difference is, I'm not the one who's going to end up alone and broke when this is over. What do you mean? I mean, now that Nathan has nothing left, how long do you think he'll stay interesting to you? No house. No money. No stability. Just a man who proved he'll lie to everyone he claims to love. I could hear her breathing, could almost hear her thinking. You're wrong. We love each other. Then I guess you'll be very happy together in his studio apartment. Goodbye, Veronica. I hung up and blocked her number. I never wanted to hear her voice again. The divorce was finalized exactly 37 days after I filed the papers. Record time, Helen said, because Nathan stopped fighting once he realized he'd already lost. I kept the house. The kids stayed with me full-time, with Nathan getting supervised visitation every other weekend. The joint savings became mine. His business equity was liquidated, and I received a check for $78,000. In total, I walked away with everything we'd built together, plus what I'd protected of my own. Nathan moved into a small apartment across town. I heard through mutual friends that Veronica left him 2 weeks after the divorce was final. Apparently, being with a broke, disgraced man wasn't as romantic as being with someone else's husband. He tried to call me several times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to pleading to apologetic. I never listened to them completely. I'd hear the first few seconds and then delete them. There was nothing he could say that would change anything. Our daughter asked me once if Daddy was coming home. I knelt down to her level and said gently, "No, sweetheart. Daddy made some choices that hurt our family. But you'll still see him, and he still loves you very much. This isn't about you." She accepted that with the resilience children somehow manage. Within weeks, the kids adjusted to the new normal. They were happier, actually. No more tension in the house. No more late-night arguments they pretended not to hear. 3 months after the divorce, I ran into Diane, Nathan's mother, at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she wanted to pretend she hadn't noticed and keep walking. But I caught her eye, and she stopped. "Emily," she said quietly. "How are you?" "I'm doing well, actually. How are you?" She glanced around like she was afraid someone might overhear. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't know he was capable of something like that." I believed her. Diane had always been kind to me, and I saw genuine regret in her eyes. "Thank you for saying that. He's my son, and I love him. But what he did was unforgivable. You deserved better." Her voice cracked slightly. "Those kids deserved better." "They still have me," I said firmly. "And they're going to be fine." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "If you ever need anything, please call me. I know I'm his mother, but you were my daughter-in-law for 10 years. That meant something to me." We hugged briefly in the middle of the frozen foods aisle, 2 women connected by a man who'd disappointed us both. As I drove home, I realized I felt no bitterness toward her. She hadn't known. She wasn't responsible for her adult son's choices. I could separate her from his actions. That realization felt like another small piece of healing. 6 months after the divorce, Nathan requested a meeting to discuss custody arrangements. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. Older somehow. We sat across from each other in uncomfortable silence until the coffee arrived. "I'm not here to make excuses," he started. "But I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. For lying to you. For betraying you. For throwing away our family." I sipped my coffee and said nothing. "I've been going to therapy," he continued. "Trying to figure out why I did what I did. Trying to be better." "For who?" I asked. "For yourself? For the kids? Or so you can feel less guilty?" He flinched. "All of those reasons, I guess. Does it matter?" "Not really. What's done is done." He looked down at his hands. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm asking anyway. Not for me. For the kids. So we can co-parent without all this anger between us." I considered that. The anger had faded, replaced by something closer to indifference. He was my children's father, and they loved him despite everything. For their sake, I could be civil. "I'm not angry anymore," I said honestly. "But forgiveness isn't something you can ask for and receive like a favor. It's something that might happen over time, or might not. Either way, I'll work with you for the kids' sake. That's the best I can offer." He nodded slowly. "That's fair. That's more than fair." We talked logistics. Pickup times. Holiday schedules. School events. It was businesslike and efficient, nothing like the passionate arguments we used to have. We were strangers now, co-parenting strangers, and that was fine. 1 year after I found those messages on Nathan's laptop, I was sitting in my backyard with a book and a glass of wine. The kids were at Nathan's apartment for the weekend. The house was quiet. I should have felt lonely. Instead, I felt peaceful. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. Trusting. Naive. Building a life on a foundation of lies without knowing it. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd fought for herself and won. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Karen. "Dinner next week? There's someone I want you to meet." I smiled. Karen had been trying to set me up for months. Before, I'd always said no. I wasn't ready. Maybe I still wasn't completely ready. But I was open to the possibility. "Sure," I texted back. "Wednesday works." I set down the phone and looked around my backyard. The garden I'd replanted was blooming. The house behind me was mine, completely mine, filled with memories I was slowly replacing with new ones. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of potential. Nathan had spent 10 years betraying me in secret, building a double life while I believed in our marriage. In the end, it took me less than 3 months to dismantle everything he'd built, to take back my life and my dignity. He'd lost his wife, his home, his financial stability, his girlfriend, and his reputation. I'd lost a cheating husband and gained freedom. The math seemed fair to me. I went back inside and walked through my home, seeing it with fresh eyes. In the living room, pictures of the kids smiled from the walls. In the kitchen, my new dishes filled the cabinets, bright yellow instead of the boring white Nathan had insisted on. In my office, diplomas and awards hung next to a calendar full of meetings and deadlines for the promotion I'd accepted. In my bedroom, the new bedding was soft and comfortable, mine alone. I'd done this. I'd taken the worst betrayal imaginable and turned it into an opportunity to rebuild. Not perfectly. Not without pain and doubt and moments of wondering if I'd ever trust anyone again. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd thrived. That evening, I poured another glass of wine and toasted myself in the empty kitchen. "To ice-cold payback," I said aloud. "To knowing your worth. To starting over. And to never, ever settling for less than you deserve." The words echoed in the silence, and I smiled. Nathan thought he could have everything. 2 women. 2 lives. No consequences. He was wrong. The truth always surfaces eventually, and when it does, the people who built their lives on lies find out how quickly everything can crumble. He spent 10 years betraying me in secret. I spent 10 weeks ending his entire illusion. And I'd do it again without hesitation. Because I deserved better. The kids deserved better. And now, finally, we had better. The storm had passed, and I was standing on the other side, stronger than I'd ever been. That was victory enough.